Good evening and Happy New Year, fellow writers and friends. Welcome to the January 2022 edition of the Authors Showcase series, a virtual experience hosted by the South Florida Writers Association, a nonprofit organization whose mission is to promote literary arts and support writers. Visit our website, www.southfloridawriters.org, for more information about our programs and benefits for members. My name is Evelyn Benson, and I am thrilled to introduce our featured author, Renee Ebert, and her latest book, Dead Eyes in Late Summer, a novel of fantasy, magic, realism, and romance that spans 1918 to 1931. Author Renee was born in Philadelphia. Her greatest love was reading. She married young and quickly had children, and when not caring for her little ones, she launched her own study of fiction, combining bestsellers that caught her eye and the masterpieces of the past. Bronte sisters, Jane Austen, then moved forward to Dorothy Parker and others. Renee moved with her husband, Louis Wasser, to Washington, D.C., where she was inspired at Georgetown University by her professors and turned writing papers into plotting novels. Renee has had a long career in philanthropy and public health with nonprofit organizations, a work which she still enjoys. She now lives her dream near the ocean in Ormond Beach, Florida, writing new novels. Visit her website, rebertnovels.com. It's rebertnovels.com for more information about the author and her books, which are available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Books and Books. Friends, let's welcome to the virtual stage novelist Renee Ebert.
This is Renee Ebert. Thank you for coming and to hear about my new novel. It's Dead Eyes in Late Summer, and it's available now for purchase. I thank you for taking the time to join with me and discuss my novel. I just tell you a little bit about myself, that I was I'm still a member of the South Florida Writers Association. And I joined because a lot of the novel was written during the time that I was there, which was a nice thing. And I felt that I learned an awful lot from the people that were kind enough to do the critique and be a part of this process. I've been writing for a long time, and probably almost as long as I was reading. I see frequently the words and the actions of my people as though I were watching a film while I'm actually writing it, which is great because it gives me a chance to kind of give dimension to the work. Dead Eyes in Late Summer is, as you probably know, a novel of fantasy and magic realism, and it combines fact and fiction. It's a historical novel dropped inside of the 1920s in New York and then in Paris. There are speakeasies and Charleston contests, and there's exciting moments that we all dream of experiencing. And these young people get to live what we dream, I guess you could say. We get to live it with them. The novel begins in 1931 at the end of, you would think, at the novel, with lots of unresolved issues. And Adalyn Crawford is visited at that time, at the very beginning of the novel, while she is asleep on a hammock by her former lover, who a guy who seduced her back when she was 16 in 1918. And now in 1931, she's married to his brother Garnett. And Innes is dead. We find out way later how that happened. The story stays in the present long enough to show us why Innes is back. One of the reasons is he's drawn to Adolin, and she is the portal through which he must travel in order to get back into the real world. And he loves her, and he wants to be with her, and he can only get into this world through Adolin. The second reason that he can get into this world is that Garnet and Adolin are having marital problems, which gives him strength to move forward and visit Adolin, as he does often, first in dreams and then in person. The story goes back then to 1918 and traces their lives from the day that both brothers met Adolin and both fell in love with her. Who will win her is the big question. But before we get there, we step aside and look into 1918, just after World War I, when all the young men came back and many carried with them influenza and the epidemic with them. Just after both young men meet Adolin, she becomes fatally sick with the flu. And for a brief moment, she falls into another girl's body and has an out-of-body experience, experiencing the girl's death and her own. The girl is Lucienne Bonet, and she will have a very big role in Innes's life as well. Adolin and Garnet, down the path after having courted, marry and move to Paris. And it's right in the middle of the Jazz Age. The Roaring Twenties is everywhere. Paris is exciting. Adolin and Garnet meet very famous people, real people actually, which lends, I think, a kind of magic to the whole novel as well. And Adolin meets a very handsome young Howard Hughes. And I want to say right now, take the time to Google Howard Hughes at the age of 20, and you'll see why I would consider having him as a person of interest in terms of the relationship he has with Adolin. But this story is one that needs to be read and experienced from that standpoint. All of the facts will all fall into place. Reading the novel, we see action among characters where their passions and their friendships occur, and reason to why the magic is so very unusual. At the end of the novel, we fast forward again to 1931, and that hammock is swinging again, and Innes is making love to Adolin Crawford, and then she wakes up, but she wakes up to her own power over him and over her own destiny. Watch some of the characters, a woman named Mama Sorrow, for instance, who performs the seances to help Adolin make the right decisions for herself and her family. Throughout it all, the scenes of kindness and some scenes of deception brings up short to what life is in so many ways being presented. I hope you enjoy reading this novel as much as I did writing it. I look forward to hearing from you. You can go to my website, and it's rebertnovels.com, and you can read further about the novel, and you can contact me with any questions you may have. And if you read the novel, I thank you very much for having done so. I ask you to consider perhaps telling me what you liked about the novel and include that in a review. I would really love to see what your thoughts are on these characters, because we form them and then you experience them and then you tell us other things about them. We had no idea what we were doing. Now I'm going to read to you just briefly the short prologue and one other scene in the novel when Adolin meets the two young men for the first time. The hammock began to swing, the first sign something was wrong. From a dead stop, a soft movement began back and forth. Adolin Crawford told herself. She dreamed the whole thing. There stood Innes, handsome as always in summer light linens, swinging the hammock. He came and lay on top of her, and it felt so familiar, so like what it had been. Unlike a dream, she felt it when he entered her and rocked her with him the way he did back then, her then only 16. Adolin came awake with a shudder, finding him gone. Suddenly, near noon, the bell from the kitchen summoned the workers from the fields. She cried for Innes, herself, and what they had, and then she sat astride the hammock, straightened her dress, pulled it down before someone walked by. That was no dream. She always knew Innes would come back for her, and after 10 years of being gone, he came all the way back. She needed to tell someone, otherwise, how would she be able to relive the feelings? The other piece that I'm reading is back in 1918, when Innes and Garnett meet Adolin for the first time. The 1918 November wind blew into the room, leaving Garnett a vision in its midst instead of the red and gold leaves. Delia's brother Charles, the visiting college boys, and Innes all joking, as young men will, about sports, then about subjects of real and only interest to any of them, a willing female. They displayed none of the chivalry that young women want to dream and believe in. No, they expressed pure, unadulterated male passion, which keeps the world impregnated with the next generation of fresh young faces. Of course, only they only sought pleasure. If polled, none of them would have chosen to think in terms of fathering or parenting the next generation, all children still themselves. When Adolin rushed into the front room, every young man automatically stood to attention. Firstly, to see a young woman whose wildly delicious hair proved her energy and health. Tresses red and gold and brown, much like the leaves the South brings to November. Secondly, her shiny and beautiful dark eyes seized every one of them in mid-sentence. They fell over their own words and one another's. Their joking stopped. They became very gentle, solicitous even, and Garnett saw and would forever remember Innes's one step toward her. In that one step, he saw it all as though he possessed a crystal ball. In that one step, he never saw Innes the same again. Always close to one another, that one step separated those boys. It didn't stop them from talking to one another in the most genuine or caring manner. Two boys always freely sharing their minds about anything or anyone had simply changed about one person, and her name is Adolin. Charles, who is she? Garnett ran his hand nervously through his wavy hair as he whispered to his friend. Come now, you don't remember Mrs. Coperthwaite's tea dances when we were all sophomores in high school? That's Adolin Jackson, Captain Jackson's older daughter. She was just 14 back at those dances, but I swear I could tell she'd be the death of all of us someday. Charles looked around and then bent closer to his friend and added, and I think she already is. He gestured to Garnett to see Innes approach her. Garnett's eyes rested on her figure. How could they not? She wore jodhpurs, and they accented her frame admirably. Girls just didn't do that, Garnett told himself. Not good girls, not decent girls. Yet he knew she possessed nothing bad or indecent about her. He moved next to his brother in a second, seemingly transported, never having experienced his own walking. She's a bit young for you, brother, he said impetuously, all he could find to say. Maybe too young for you, brother. Innes spoke so only Garnett could hear the retort and closed in on his quarry. It's a pleasure. He cocked his head to one side with a side smile. Are you lost, Miss Jackson? Adolin looked closely at Innes, then smiled. Lost? Charles, are your friends from someplace outside of Tulip Junction? I think I know you all. No, not lost. I was expecting to see Delia, but I guess she'll be upstairs. She turned with her question to Charles, who nodded like a puppet on a string and pointed to the graceful flight of stairs where Delia waited. Well, then I'll leave you boys to it. Garnett watched as his brother followed Adolin till both had moved out of earshot of the rest. A fire burned in Garnett that surprised even him for its ferocity. What the hell's the matter with me? He ached to hear their interchange. He hated to see Innes so close to her, could tell his brother breathed in her perfume and the clean scent of soap and water from her bath. He somehow knowing she'd bathed before jumping on a horse to ride over here. He turned toward the stairs and glimpsed Adolin taking leave of Innes. With a smile, she took possession again of her hand, which Innes had continued to hold. Garnett knew Innes's gesture to introduce himself to her would come with a handshake. One riding glove remained on her left hand. Something resembling resignation engulfed Garnett. So he touched you first. I hope you find the novel as moving and as compelling as I have in the process. These people became so very real to me that they woke me up at night. And I believe very much in them. And I think maybe that's part of the magic that we find in writing. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy the novel.